死んだよ。
They died? Shocked, I turned around. Who was this? It was a girl I'd never seen before.
死んだよ。死んだ。死んだとも。きっと君も死ぬ。藤吉村にようこそ。気の毒なお兄さん。
The girl turned and ran, her skirt swaying behind her.
待て、モッチー。
と、なぜわかった、うんこマン。
誰がうんこマンだ。いや、確かに見た目は結構びっくりしたが、喋り方と声はもうちょっと工夫した方がいいな。
いや、別に変装のつもりじゃないし。
普段着だとでも？
What?
お、僕は超貧乏だからずっと学生服を着てたらタエバーが文句タラタラ言ってきてね。だからハルちゃんにお下がりをもらったのさ。可愛かろう。
まあ確かに可愛いが、一応性別は男なんだよね、君は。
If I didn't already, I'd have assumed he was a girl.
ちゃんとついているぞ。ツレションの時に確認すればいい。
I didn't want to see it at all.
自分の性別に違和感があったりするの？
なんだそれ。僕は男だ。
じゃあなんでそんなことを？
別になんでなんてない。僕はそういうやつだからだ。
そういう。
そういうやつ？
卑怯の振る舞いというやつ。頭がおかしいので普通の人とはうまくやっていけないのだ。
What?
でも好きなようにやらないのはそれはそれできっついから多少は変にするわけだ。
つまり自然体というわけ？
そう。寒くなければすっぱだかでも悪くないな。
Oh, well. So basically, this was a guy with a unique sense of, well, everything. Unless he found something that really clicked, he'd have a hard time living anywhere, even in the city.
そりゃ苦労もあったろうね。
いやー、安水はだいたい住みやすいぜ。うんこマンも住むといい。
なんでそんな話になるかな。
都会は住みにくかろう。
いや、断然便利だしな。
そうか。てっきり嫌なことがあって飛び出してきたのかと思った。
まあそれは否定しないけどさ。
うんこマンも頭おかしい人でしょ。
全力で否定するけど。
あれおかしいな。同類だと思ったのに。ねえじっちゃん。
Whoa, there was a weird old guy in the bushes.
僕はうんこマンが変態だと思う。だよね、うんこマンは。
うんこマン。お願いだからその故障を広めないでくれ。夫妻子でも春秋でも何でもいいから。
ハッサン？
はあさん。
Did I look like a Middle Easterner? I was mildly bothered by the accentuation too, but he was probably avoiding using nicknames that were similar to Haru-chan's name.
まあいいか、それで。
うんこマンはハッサンになった。
I was never a poop man to begin with.
おじいさんとは親しいの？
頭おかしい友達だ。
What? Well, the old man seemed to be enjoying it.
ハッサンも仲間になろう。霧が晴れたら上藤吉に鶏盗みに行こう。
そんなカッパ的な。
Why did he like me that much? Well, that might have been a good thing. He seemed to be a bit more unique than the other two students.
ちなみに今日はなんで他の高校生たちと一緒じゃないの？
だってはるちゃん怒ってたし、楽しくないことになりそうな気配が全開だったもん。
彼女は何を怒ってたの？
はるちゃんはさ、 やっすんのことが好きだからさ。
Oh,
知恵姉
the
が帰ってき
tea.
てやっすんが嬉しそうなのが気に入らないのだよ。
そしたらなぜ僕が怒られる？
やっすんが知恵姉のこと好きなのをはるちゃんは一応応援しちゃってるし。
Well, I sure didn't expect to hear something like that.
片思いしてる相手の恋を手助けしてしまってるってことか。
そうそう、だからハッサンが知恵姉と突如ベタベタしだしたんでわけわかんなくなってんだよ。
So basically, I accidentally enter a love triangle.
ちなみにちえみちゃんはそういうの気づいてるのかな？
そりゃそうじゃない？でも相手にしてないし脈はないね。
Man, this kid was harsh.
つうわけでよかったな。知恵姉はハッサンのものだ。
いやー、どうかな。っていうか君はそれでいいのかい？
なんで聞くかな。
いや、短期間の観察ではあるけど君は奔放なくせにはるちゃんに対してはどこか海外しい感じがして。
まあ多分そんなんじゃないな。幼なじみとして危なっかしいから心配してるだけさ。
意外だなモッチー。そういうやつをからかいまくるキャラかと思った。
ハッサンだったら死ぬほどおちょくるけど、やっすんには借りがいっぱいあるし、はるちゃんはかわいそうな子だからな。
なんかいっぺんにいろいろ聞くのもあれだし、それはいずれ別の時に聞かせてくれ。
は、すでに喋りすぎた。何の魔術だハッサンめ。
He was the one who'd gone babbling on his own.
ところでさっき死んだって言ってたけど誰か死んだの？いや、
安水人はまだ死んでないけど死んだも同然だろう。
なんでそう思ったの？
さあ、なんでとかは僕には分からんけど、なんかね、匠兄がヘビだって言った時嫌な感じがしたんだ。今狼様が笑ったなーって。
待て、今なんて言った？
狼様が笑ったなって。
その前だ。
匠兄がヘビだって言った時、
匠さんがヘビなのか？
そう言ってた。
ちょっと休養ができた。またなモッチ、おじいさん。
狼が来るだ。
知ってたのか？
は？
Shit, I didn't have the time nor the connections.
ムロさん。
あ、なんだ。
That was my line. Why was he farming at a time like this?
鍵ありがとうございます。
ああ、それはいいけど、あんま一人でうろつくなよ。ただでさえみんなピリピリしてんだから。
そのことですが、ムロさんは狼が一晩に何人殺すか知ってますか？
ちえみのやつ、そんなことまで喋ったのかよ。
僕が無理に聞き出したんです。というか話が伝わることはあなたも予想した上でちえみちゃんに任せたはずだ。それでも情報は断片的ですが、ちょっと心配があるんです。すみませんが教えてもらえませんか？
実のところな、俺はバカらしいんだよ。こんなことで他の世話は邪魔されんのがよ。ちえみやあんたにはわかるかと思ったが、結局あんたもマジになってんのか？
Well, he really didn't seem all that bothered by all this, but
もう二人死んでいる。
何が珍しいんだ？
は？
あのな、人間なんざいくらでも死んでるし、俺はいくらでも片付けてる。
what was he talking about?
上の土砂崩れの現場見たか？ありゃ8年前に野里が手入れたら崩れてそのまんまになってる。気味悪がって片付けもしやがらねえ。 作業員の死体は俺が掘り出して埋めた。
Oh, I had no idea that was such a big deal.
バカな町の奴らが山ん中で首つって獣に食われることもある。俺やおやっさんが苦労して片付ける羽目になる。
Ooh.
皿長に死体が流れることも珍しくねえ。渓流釣りだかなんだか知らねえが上流は危ねえっつうのによ。それでもな、誰も何もしてくれねえ。俺らとしちゃな、無縁仏で埋めてそれで終わりにしてきたこった。山っつうのは獣が出ようがムクロが出ようが何でもありなんだよ、兄ちゃん。
でも今回は村の中で。
ああ、なんだろうな。月の輪が人を食うなんざ聞かねえし、もしかして本物の狼でも群れで来たかもな。
あれが野獣の仕業だと。
人間の仕業だっつうのもどうなんだ。要は夜に番を立てりゃいい話だろうが、なぜバカみてえに殺し合う必要がある。
This person was hard to read. There was no denying he had a good head on his shoulders. He was reasonable and skeptical about the unknown. On the other hand, there were some things he put even above rationality. It felt like something you could call Yasumizu's rule, or better yet, fellowship. He looked at the situation from the perspective of, I gotta protect Yasumizu. He did whatever he could within those constraints, but he was in denial about the existence of enemies originating from within Yasumizu. To him, this situation was just a common case of some outsider died, so what? Or maybe that was what he really wanted to think. That made the situation very bad. But I, being an outsider, couldn't say that.
そうですよね。おっしゃる通り、そんな迷信に耳を貸す方がどうかしてます。
He looked displeased. What was I supposed to do?
ただちょっと気になるんです。伝説で今夜一晩で皆殺しになるとかなってるなら心の持ちようが違う。
ああ、それはねえな。狼が殺すってのは一晩に一人だけのはずだ。
そうなんですか。伝説上それはなぜだってことになってるんでしょう。
ばあちゃんなんつってたかな。誰も山の掟には逆らえん。世持つ狼様であってもだったか。
世持つ狼？
蘇った狼って意味だと。
Weird. I felt like I'd heard that term before. Still, wasn't it weird that the laws applied to the wolves too? They were on the Yomibito side, as in those opposing the mountain. And I was pretty sure that the law of the mountain said the only one person could be killed per day. Lynching one during the day was the limit, and killing more than one per night was against the rule. Both would make you the target of the corruption. It didn't make much sense to me, but at least I found out that wolves too could only kill one person per night.
変なこと聞いてすみませんでした。おとなしく引っ込んでおきます。あ、男手がいるときは言ってください。勝手に手は出さないでおきますが、ここに居候してる分働きたいんです。
ああ、そうだな。
His last reply was half-hearted, but at least I got a bit of the rules I saw I was missing. When I came back to the dining hall, I found the students, Chiemi and Yoshitsugu-kun, Yasunaga's little brother. Meiko had left.
うんこマンじゃない、ハッサン。うんこマン？
何それ？
The name still got a chance to spread. That aside, I had to find out what happened at today's feast. Recalling what Mochi told me made this kinda hard.
悪いけど、ちょっとちえみちゃん借りていい？
わお、ちえみさん大人気。
だからあなたは懲りないわね。
はるちゃん、いいから僕らは母さんを手伝おう。
兄ちゃんも何か言ってよ。
多分難しい話なんだよ。
僕は皿を叩き割る係。
はるちゃん、
近持くんを押さえつける係。何よこれ。
ごめんね、なんかバタバタして。
安永くんと何を話してた？
さっきの宴でね、ちょっとまずいよねって。
Yeah, I figured it was something like that.
匠さんがヘビって名乗ったと近持くんから聞いたんだけど。
Wait, Jamie didn't tell you that?
うん、そうなんだよね。
他にヘビは？
No, there's only one.
他？いや、ヘビは一人だし。
The mountain gave 4 kinds of guardians. The snake could ask the mountain whether one of the participants was a wolf or not. The monkey was the only one of which there were 2. They had the power to know who the other monkey was. The crow could determine whether the person who was lynched the previous day was a wolf or not. And the spider could ask God to protect one of the other participants from the wolf's attack. Honestly, if this so-called God really had that power, I'd complain to him that he should protect everyone. And as far as I knew, anyone who didn't have a guardian was either a powerless human or a wolf. The human could kill a person during the day, while the wolves could kill a person during the night. It was a battle for survival. The humans had to do everything to find and kill the wolves. If they couldn't find a single wolf during the feast, the whole event was completely meaningless. The wolves would simply crush the settlement.
殺人の是非を一旦脇に置くならば、今日狼容疑者を選べなかったことは単純に一日ロスだよね。
そうだね。そのこともさっきヤスくんと話してた。
そして実質ヘビの正体が確定してしまった。
うん、ちょっと嫌な状況だね。
She understood it well. We couldn't expect the help of the police or getting a forensic investigation. Not to mention, we were up against supernatural monsters. As things were, the snake's power was the only way to find out who was a wolf or not. In other words, losing the snake would mean losing their most powerful weapon against the wolves.
でも、多分今日は大丈夫なんだ。クモは匠兄ちゃんを守るようにってことになったから。
待って、クモもバレたのか？
No?
ヤスくんがこの場で明かせば狼にも聞かれるから秘密にしておこうって。
Sharp.
それで肝臓じいちゃんが OK 出して方針が決まったんだ。
正しそうだね。
と思う。ヘビについてもそういう風にできればよかったのかな。
They really should have. It was best to secretly gather info without revealing their guardians, especially for the snake. He should have kept quiet and used his power to find out as much as reasonably possible before revealing himself. I knew it was difficult to figure out right away, but the fact that the snake, the most important role, was the first to be outed was really bad. From my perspective, Takumi-san had been so focused on protecting Yasumizu himself that he'd make a terrible mistake. He appeared calm, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he realized this and was actually pretty shaken.
結果、どうなると思う？
She asked like she already knew the answer.
クモは言われるがままに匠さんを守る。当然、狼もそれを聞いているんだから。匠さんを殺そうとすれば、クモが阻むんだろう。どうやるのかは知らないが。
だね。結果、1日分の殺人権をロスする。
Jamie seemed to process this as a logic game too.
僕が狼なら、匠さんは無視して、別の誰かを殺す。
春明さんもそう思うか。ちなみに、狙われるとしたら誰かな？
Someone random, maybe?
それはわからない。
Yeah.
狼側の選択傾向がわからないからね。奴らが女子供の血をすすりたいとかなら、狙われるのは若い子たちだろうし。
怖い。
大丈夫。ちえみちゃんより若い子がいるから。
殺す。
大丈夫。美人狙いだったら一頭。
許す。でもそれはそれでやだな。殺される前に何されるかわかんないし。
I'm sure there were plenty of things they could conceive. Apparently, there was another layer to the worst possible scenario.
趣味以外の方向で言えばそうだな、殺すことで村人側が大きく動揺するような人物、集落の有力者、あるいは今後のゲーム展開を左右するような優秀なプレイヤー。
肝臓じいちゃん、あるいはヤスくん。
That seemed likely. Yasunaga-kun was the only one who'd done something helpful for the villagers this time. He seemed to be the leader of the high schoolers and had a good head on his shoulders. But his ideas require Kanzo Makishimashi's approval, which made it pretty clear he was a standout. Honestly, I expected him to take more initiative than he had, but the fact he considered the young people's opinion showed real leadership skills. In any case, he wasn't someone the human wanted to lose. Oh yeah.
匠さんが誰を調べるかは決めたの？
うん、清之助さん。
何そのチョイス？
何って本人の希望で。あと人間関係的に不利な人から優先的に調べて安全性を上げようっていう。
I wasn't so sure about that choice. Those who were confirmed as non-wolves would have much more freedom to act. At the very least, they wouldn't be suspected as wolves who were just trying to exploit the situation during the feast. That being the case, Tsurunde had opted to choose a potential leader to investigate. While I didn't really know if Kiyosuke no Satoshi had the skills, but from what I could tell, he definitely lacked the influence to lead. If they wanted to secure a reliable leader, they should have went for someone like Kanzo Makishimashi. But wait.
もし蛇の対象がその夜に狼にやられてしまうなら、蛇が無駄になるか。死んだ人はカラスが調べればいいことだから。
違うよ。夜に殺されるのは狼が選ぶんだから、間違いなく人間だよ。カラスはあくまで昼に宴で選ばれて殺された人の正体を知れるだけ。
Also, the crow didn't know the identity of the murder victim from the wolves. So if a monkey get killed, we didn't know that it was the monkey.
あ、そうか。確かに。
Whatever the case, perhaps investigating Kiyonosuke wasn't that much of a mistake. Did that mean that they were actually doing a decent job? Well, it'd be pretty bad if Kanzoshi was one to go. Chiemi looked gloomy. She and I probably felt that it wasn't a complete blunder, but this still had a bad feeling about it. During the feast, everyone had to lock themselves somewhere all alone around every sunset. It called sheltering. Well, I could understand it, considering the legends, but I still wondered why the students didn't go to school. It was a weekday. When I asked, they just told me, why would we leave when it's so dangerous? The idea that they couldn't leave when the mist was here was so popular, it affected their daily lives. Also, the people at Kami Fujiyoshi had to know that Yasumizu was covered in mist, right? Considering the school, they probably had few students to begin with. The non-presence of the three from Yasumizu would normally be a serious problem. I knew it was a settlement for the ostracized, but did they really neglect this place that badly? Looking at it from that angle, it was safe to assume that the local village, Kami Fujiyoshi included, actually concealed the feast of the Yomi Purge. I thought about that and similar things in room 203 of the student dorm, the place I was given. Chiemi had given me some cup ramen and hot water. We chatted for a moment about being neighbors for a while, and then she returned to her room. Weird. We could be so casual about this, considering there was a chance we wouldn't meet again tomorrow. After dinner, I took a bath. The gas boiler was pretty damn old, so learning how to use it took a while. There were some working electrical outlets too, so I could charge my phone. I didn't have a wristwatch, so that was important. By the way, my room didn't have a kitchen. I was pretty sure the other room didn't either. From what I could tell, no one here actually cooked or ate at their own homes. Why? They all relied on the dining hall to provide their meals. This settlement had not only a unique culture but a way of life as well. I couldn't help but wonder how something like this began and survived into the modern era. It was an interesting subject to research, but for now I had to worry about the fact that my life was in danger. Anyway, what were my options now? I wasn't part of the feast, but walking around at night was probably dangerous regardless. After all, I had memories of getting killed doing exactly that. From a logical standpoint, that was probably just a dream, but it had a quality to it that made it hard to believe it was. I had to be careful until I was certain. Then again, I had a record of surviving by just not making any noise at night. Maybe I should have stayed awake and looked around. Also, Takumi-san had said they were gonna have someone keep watch at night, didn't he? Was he gonna do it himself? Considering the snake's importance, he shouldn't do something so dangerous. Shit, they barely decide anything in the feast. I wasn't getting enough info either. I felt like I barely knew the basics. Talking during the feast meant giving info to the wolves, but if the humans kept too many things hidden, the wolves would end up knowing way more than them, and that was just dangerous. Still, there was a limit to what I could do in my situation. If I kept being the messenger I was today, I could create a huge imbalance of info myself. Not to mention, I could be deemed suspicious and lose the residents' trust. Shit, what was I supposed to do here? Was it best for me to just stay quiet and wait for the feast to end? That wasn't like me at all. There was a mail slot on the door. I opened it up and looked outside. Everything was still covered in mist, so I couldn't see much. I could only see the handrail and the branch going in the hallway. But maybe I could see some intruder if I kept staring? Not likely. After all, this was the room at the end of the second floor. Haru-chan's and Chiemi's room were closer to the stairs, so I couldn't see anyone going to attack them. The only time I could see the monster come would be when it was coming for me. Maybe keeping watch like this was the most important thing if I wanted to stay alive, but I found it hard to put my own life on the priority list. For some reason, I felt like if I died, I'd just go back to the starting point. Yeah, better not think that. Anyway, I had to stay awake. I still had many things to worry and think about. Dot 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 dot. Next day? What? As I woke up and tried to move, my head rubbed against something tough and then smacked into the doorknob. I writhed in pain. What was going on? Did I fall asleep against the door? Was I more tired than I thought? I was glad I didn't die and all, but this was a failure in my eyes. Sleeping in an unnatural position made my whole body hurt. I wobbled over to my fully charged phone. It was 6 o'clock. That was early morning for me. I'd have loved to just go back to sleep, but I was too curious about the feast. After washing my face with hot water and putting on my shoes, I decided to take a peek through the mail slot. Outside, I saw Chiemi standing there with a knife in hand. I reflexively stepped back, tripped and fell on my ass. What the hell was that? There was a woman standing before my room with a weapon. I'd only caught a glimpse, but that was enough to conclude that I was dealing with a scene straight out of a horror movie. What could have prompted this? Did she suspect I was a wolf, or was she a wolf herself? She knocked on the door, making me squeal a bit.
Haruaki-san,起きてる?
Would she kill me if I replied?
ハルアキさん起きて。他のみんな を見て回るから付き合ってほしいんだ。ちなみに私は現在凶器を所持してますが、ご信用につき心配なきよう。
紛らわしい。
あ、起きてた。大丈夫大丈夫。ほら、凶器はちょっと離れたところに置きました。
I hesitantly peeked through the mail slot and saw her hopping around, showing me her empty hands. After meeting up with Chiemi, we went around the dorm and woke up the students. All of them were alright. While they got ready, we went to Nosato Mansion just cause it was closed. Yasumizu was still misty and unpleasantly silent. I walked carefully, just like yesterday morning. I couldn't write off the possibility that a werewolf would jump out of the mist and tear me apart. It'd be over for me. I was walking ahead, dragging Chiemi by the hand, careful about where I was going. If something happened and I got eaten or something, Chiemi could either fight back or run away.
誰かいるのか。あ、野里さん、久石とちえみちゃんです。どこだ。そこか。
We peered through the mist and a gloomy frown appeared.
いやー、どうも。
どうもどうも。
屋敷は大丈夫だったみたいですね。
当然だろう。屋敷には古臭いながらもセキュリティ設備が設けられている。化け物だろうが侵入できるとは思えんね。
そっか。じゃあみんなで避難させてもらえます？
なぜそんなことをせねばならんのかね。これはYasumizuの問題だろう。
そっか、そうですよね。じゃあYasumizuの問題解決のためとっとと下に降りてます。
待ちたまえ。一緒に動かないと危険だろう。
Really, I was beginning to think this guy was best described as all bark, no bite. Though prideful and vain, he wasn't as smart as he claimed to be, as shown by his inability to take charge of the feast. Also, his fussy attitude was probably just him making up for his fear. It was entirely possible he was just putting on an air that the mystery of Yasumizu, or rather Fujiyoshi, was actually scaring him. Anyway, we went downhill and met up with the students.
慣れた道でも不気味なもんだね。
Oh.
だね。霧って不思議だ。
これなら脱いでも怒られない。
やめろ、バカ者。
Haru Makishima was acting weird. Mochi was definitely expecting a retort from her. She didn't say anything, and her face was so pale you could tell through the mist. Hanging her head, she was slightly shaking. Everyone else could see it too, but no one chose to address it. Questions would quickly become suspicions after all. Perhaps she was a wolf and did something horrific last night? As we all thought similar things, she suddenly collapsed to the ground.
大丈夫か、はるちゃん。
触らないで。
Her hoarse scream shocked everyone.
はるちゃん。
兄ちゃん、違う。ごめん。だけど今は。
そうだよね。神経質にもなるよ。足元に気をつけて。
We then slowed down. Haru-chan, not touching anyone's hand, was at the rear of the group. As we walked, trees and stones drifted in and out of visibility through the surrounding mist. Our vision was so limited, it felt like the world around us was changing with every step we took. A tunnel of trees, a path on the paddy field, a stone platform, a concrete stairwell. We walked between realms every passing second. I was still wondering about Haru-chan. What was on her mind? Was she afraid or worried? After descending for a bit, we arrived at the plaza.
みんな
They're all
無事ね。
They're all right? I see all of you are alright. We met two more people in front of the dining hall.
ご老人方は朝寝坊かね。
ばあちゃんは身支度中だ。体調が良くねえらしい。 これから来てねえ連中のところを回る。キヨ、お前はついてこい。
なぜ君が私に命令する？
男手がいるかもしれねえからだ。不妻子、悪いがあんたも頼むぜ。
This was the first time he ordered me to do something, but it wasn't a situation where I could be happy about him relying on me.
ええ、もちろん。
So it's the grandpa. He probably had a bad feeling, namely that he wouldn't be able to rely on a certain someone ever again. As I passed by Kaori-san, I heard her whisper.
あのね、安永、ちょっといい？
何母さん。
義継を探してほしいの。離れにいないようだから。
Oh, the younger brother is missing too. Everyone probably had a bad feeling about this. The three of us guys checked the houses. Yasunaga-kun, Chiemi, and Mochi walked around the settlement. We agreed to split up and start searching. The misty village was silent. I couldn't hear anyone chatting. I'd seen these buildings from the outside, but it was my first time actually walking in. The shabby buildings built using blackened planks were more or less buried in vegetation. Some were on the verge of collapse. The way their frames jutted from the mist reminded me of the carcasses of giant beasts. I walked on the line between the grass, a footpath, surely. I often heard something small jump in the grass. It was probably just some bugs or frogs, but it still made me flinch.
リカコさんはここに住んでいるのだったか。
ああ、そこんちだ。
くそ、なんだって彼女がこんな場所に住まねばならん。
お前が知らねえんだったら俺らが知るわけねえだろうが。身車あたりの指図じゃねえのか？
私が知る限りでは、彼女が休みずに移ったのは自主的とのことだがね。第一必要がない。
ひょっとしたら霧が立つんで魔除けのまじないでもしに来たんじゃねえか。無駄だったがよ。
室匠、私ならともかく彼女相手にあんまり口が過ぎるんじゃないかね。相手は上藤吉の長者の正統だぞ。
知るか、ここは安水だ。あいつ自分で言ってたろうが、宴になりゃみんな食われんだよ。
リカコさん、リカコさん、ご無事ですか？
Apparently, Takumi-san didn't like the Uematsu family, or the four head families in general. Now that I thought about it, though she wasn't as disliked as Kiyonosuke, the villagers in general weren't fond of Rikako Uematsu. It seems like a pretty obvious outcome though. Yasumizu was the settlement for the ostracized. It was impossible for a member of one of the head families who openly spurned them to form a good relationship with the locals. Rikako-san emerged before too long. She was wearing her usual strange get-up, but she didn't seem any different from she looked yesterday.
メイコを連れて行きませんと。
We moved on to the next house. It felt like Rikako-san was urging me, so I woke the girl up.
メイコちゃん、朝だよ。
Well, I couldn't imagine Rikako-san raising her voice, while the other two probably didn't feel like they had to get involved with the girl. After a few calls, she finally came out, still half asleep.
メイコ、よかった。
キヨ、二人を食堂まで連れて行ってやれ。
リカコさん、こちらへ。足元に気をつけて。
はい。
She was apparently trying to get my attention, so I turned around and said, "Yes?"
ごめんなさい。
Why? Her sudden apology left me completely confused. She then departed alongside the other two, leaving me alone with Takumi-san.
いいんですか？清之助さんがいなくて。
どうせ役に立たねえ。植松の坊主もどきがくたばってたら運ばせようと思ってたけどよ。
Whoa.
もう誰がやられたか分かったから。
まだ狼じじい氏の可能性も。
適当言うな。おやっさんが生きてたら誰より早起きしてとっくに休みずを3週くらいはしてるっつうんだ。 すまねえ。僕のがおやっさんの家だ。
I followed him in silence. I couldn't think of anything to say. The fact that the door was unlocked made it clear that something wasn't right. The moment I opened it, my nostrils were assaulted by a smell I experienced just yesterday, the reek of a fresh corpse. Unlike Takumi-san, who was looking away and cursing, I did my best to burn the scene I witnessed into my memory. I felt like to avert my eyes would be disrespectful, and chided myself for wanting to look away. This body was much more intact than Mamiya-san's and Hashimoto-san's. That made it much easier to become painfully aware that the fact that this was a human, an intelligent life form who was with us yesterday like it was no big deal. There was one problem though. The part of the body that used to be a head was completely destroyed. There was no part of the head left untouched. It was that thorough. It was obviously the result of relentless heavy blunt attacks. Everything above the neck was just a strange, flat mass of shattered skull fragments and white and red organic matter. Compared to it, everything else was largely unharmed. The old-looking clothing and the unexpected robust chest for someone his age were all the proof needed to know that this was the body of Kanzo Makishimashi.
片付けるんですか？
当たり前だろ。
少しだけ時間をください。
どうする気だ？
できる限りのことを調べます。
Since we had no idea when we could get out of here, protecting the scene of crime for an official investigation meant we had to leave this body to rot here, and we just couldn't do that. And considering the horrible state it was in, the villagers probably wanted to take care of it their own way as soon as possible. Not much I could do to stop that. Thus, I did my duty as someone without such obligations. This corpse was completely unlike the ones from yesterday. While those two were destroyed completely, the damage on this one was focused on the head. The weapon clearly wasn't sharp. They used something blunt. The skin on his face was torn, but not sliced apart, and the skull was shattered. This was caused by repeated blunt attacks on the head. It wasn't my job to picture whether there was some profound grudge in this. The only clear thing here was that the wolf killed him using something blunt, not claws or fangs. And it was obviously done with dedicated intent, not accidentally. And at the very least, the entity that made this corpse wasn't the same as the one that made the ones from yesterday. It made sense if you separated them and assumed that yesterday's was the corruption and today's was the wolves. Oh? But the thing I'd seen when I was walking around at night that time had the appearance of a wolf, or rather a werewolf. If the werewolves were the one bringing the corruption, the tale all this was based on would make even less sense. If the corruption was Great Lord Shinai's punishment, it'd be weird for it to be delivered by the wolves. Holding back my nausea, I looked back at the corpse. Then I rolled back my sleeve and reached for the destroyed head.
おい、何を？
ないと思いますが、一応調べます。
Decapitation meant body doubles. Mystery Writing 101. If someone brought in and killed a person with a similar build to Kanzoshi's, then left him here, his death could easily be fake.
肝臓さん、下顎に銀歯ありました？
いや、ねえよ。
His voice was strangely forced. I looked at him and realized he was kinda pale. I might have overdone it. Still, I couldn't be soft in the
お
situation.
やっさんは60過ぎて差し歯も何にも入れてねえの自慢してたから。あったのか？
いえ、誘導を避けるための質問です。健康な歯がびっしりですよ。
なんだよ。
The lower jaw was mostly intact, while the upper jaw was destroyed along the rest of the head. Despite that, I saw a hint of the old man in the eyebrow and the dark hair with streak of gray in them. It was pretty clear it was the one and only Kanzo Makishimashi, so it was probably pointless to keep thinking about the way he was injured. My hands were all messy. I'd have to wash them later. The corpse aside, Kanzoshi was lying on some thin bedding, and there was no sign of a struggle. He was either instantly killed by the first attack or knocked out, led here, and then killed. Still, it wasn't a corpse that was easy to make. The situation here was peculiar. One point I found curious was the fact that Kanzoshi surely obeyed the shelter law and locked himself in. However, the lock on the door was still perfectly intact, so logically speaking, Kanzoshi had opened the door and let the culprit in. There was no sign of resistance, so it was probably done by someone he felt safe with. However, if this was a normal killing by the standard of the Feast of the Yomi Purge, then this was definitely made possible by something unnatural. Back to the situation at hand. The futon and everything around it were bloody, obviously, but there was another strange thing about the crime scene: the dampness. Some spots were really wet, and clearly not because of the mist. It was like the murderer purposely spread some water here. Were they trying to wash away the blood spatter on them? But there was no point in doing it in front of the body. The footprints were faded. Were they trying to cover their tracks? They were still pretty visible though. It was more like they put bloody footprints on a futon and tatami that was already wet. The shape of the prints told me that they weren't made by Western shoes, Japanese clocks, or wild beasts. They were just long oval reminiscence of those made by Zori sandals. There weren't many of them though. Most of the blood was absorbed by the futon. But from what I had, I could tell there was only one type of footprint.
何か分かったのかよ。
大したことは。
だろうな。
ええ、残念ながら。
All I knew was that the culprit was a very dangerous human. As I washed my hand, Takumi-san removed the sliding door and put Kanzo-san's remains on it. He covered his destroyed face with a nearby hand towel and prepared to carry it.
後ろ頼む。
了解です。
We lifted it up, and yeah, this was definitely a job for two people.